What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. I'm your host, Pat Deneen, and this is my review of Friday night's SmackDown, which primarily was really just the first round of the King and the Queen of the Ring tournament. We got 6 matches. I'm proud of WWE. They were able to get 6 of the 8 on television for us, much like Monday Night Raw this past week. I don't know how to look at this necessarily. Should I be more impressed that, SmackDown was able to get 3/4 of their tournament done on TV, or should I be disappointed that Raw did the very same with that additional third hour? Of course, it was done by design. If WWE tried, they would have been able to get all 8 of the first round matches on Monday Night Raw this past week, but they wanted to save 2 for the house shows and live events this weekend, much like they're doing the same for SmackDown. They're saving 1 men's match, 1 women's match for these house shows, and I guess that's nice to switch things up a little bit, not lumping everything onto television, leaving it for house shows and the non-televised, so not only just so we find out in a different way or have to read up on it on the internet, but these people that go to these shows, regardless of the city, the state, they get to witness the enormity of it firsthand, which is kind of cool. King and Queen of the Ring, first round, second round, whatever it is. So going forward, how they go about this. But we got some very good matchups on SmackDown. I got to say, we got 6 matches, again, as I mentioned, 3 for the men, 3 for the women. The show opened up with a women's match, which I'm about to get to in just a moment's time. But overall, I thought the show was pretty good. It did what it needed to do, and that was pretty much that. So it took place at the Mohegan Sun Arena, and that was in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Pretty good crowd. Nothing. I don't think we may see another crowd like we did last Saturday in France, right? And for Backlash, that crowd was off the charts. They were fantastic start to finish, those whole 3.5, 4 hours or whatever it was. So let's get to this review. Start from the very top here, and I'll chime in as needed, of course, as I always do. And we're going to start off with the first match. Actually, before we get to the first match, let's get to the very first segment of the show, rather. So SmackDown GM Nick Aldis, he brought out the WWE champion who successfully defended his title again last weekend at Backlash, and that being Cody Rhodes. So the American Nightmare made his way out. He was in the midst of cutting a promo as far as where he goes from here, what's next for the champ, and he was then interrupted by the United States champion Logan Paul. And long story short, getting to the thick of things here, in just 2 weeks' time in Saudi Arabia at the King and Queen of the Ring show, we're going to get to see Cody Rhodes versus Logan Paul. I'm here for it from a wrestling standpoint, shall I say. But as far as, of course, story, this is going to be a one and done pretty much. On paper, this is amazing. More so for the international crowd in Saudi. Like they love to see all the big names. And I get it. Of course, I totally understand. And now these 2 bigger names in the United States in general. Of course, Logan is finally, or I won't say finally, shall I say, getting more and more respect as he wrestles the last 2-3 years on WWE. But now they're going to get a Cody Rhodes, a huge name in wrestling in general, not just WWE. And then we get Logan Paul, who's built quite the resume in and out of the ring. And we're going to get to see these 2 clash. And I'm fairly certain that we're going to see these 2 go at it only for Cody's title, the WWE Championship. A lot of people were wondering, is Logan's United States Championship going to be on the line here as well? And I don't think so. I don't think his title will be on the line, although Cody did tweet late Friday night after SmackDown, Cody 2 belts, much like we had Becky 2 belts when she had won at WrestleMania 35 and such. Bayley 2 belts, right? Those straps, as she referred to it during the Thunderdome era when she was tag team champion and SmackDown Women's Champion. But I don't see that happening here, regardless who comes out with the win here, which I'd have to assume it's Cody Rhodes, right? He's not going to lose to Logan Paul, not in a WWE Championship match, that's for sure. I don't see him putting his title on the line either here. I think with Logan Paul, I think Cody just wins this one, and maybe it's by DQ. Who knows? Logan Paul cheats a lot. He's got always some kind of, he's taking a page out of the Bloodlines book. In Roman Reigns' title reign, right? He's always got somebody ringside ready to help him cheat in some capacity, whether it's the brass knuckles or what have you. So that was a pretty good opening segment with Cody and Logan going back and forth on the mic. And that's what they really had to say to one another. Doesn't matter because it was all to lead to this one-off match, which, again, will be good. But as far as a storyline standpoint, there's not a whole lot to it, obviously. So following this segment with Cody Rhodes, and by the way, I got to give a shout to Fightful. They had tweeted this out during the very start of the show. I meant to mention, and I know they weren't the only ones. I certainly wasn't the only one either that thought when Nick Aldis introduced Cody Rhodes, you couldn't help but think of All In 2018, right? That was a big deal. Nick Aldis on this amazing tear as NWA's world champion, going up against the likes of the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, in Chicago for this title. Fantastic match. Cody ends up with the victory, becoming NWA champion. It was a huge deal, major accolade to Cody and what that title means to not only just him, his father, and his family in general. And here we are, right? Here we are. It's not even 6 full years later. Nick Aldis has been doing a fantastic job these past several months as the SmackDown GM. Again, hope we get to see him wrestle in WWE one day, which I'm sure that he will. And Cody's been doing a great job too. A little over 2 years since his return at WrestleMania 38, finally became champion and finished the story. And now it's time for some additional stories, some additional chapters with this title reign. Hopefully a lengthy one for Cody Rhodes. So we get to the first match of the night, and we see Naomi going one-on-one with Nia Jax. This is a first round Queen of the Ring matchup here. And this was a very good match between the two. They've met in the ring many a time. Naomi been with WWE, the better part of 12, 13 years by now, with the exception of her brief hiatus. And believe it or not, Nia Jax is well on her way to being with the company for the better part of a decade, including her tenure in NXT. Now, of course, again, much like for different reasons, Naomi had left on her own accord. Nia Jax, I believe, was released a couple years ago, came back a little over a year ago. Has done a fantastic job personally to me, and I know it's been a very popular opinion within the whole community, is that Nia Jax is having a better run within this last year or so than she did probably initially. I think that's an honest observation. So Nia's doing fantastic character work, ring work. Everybody talked about her being a little shaky in the ring. I think she's been incredibly safe. I think she's looked incredibly good. And so this was a good one. Long story short, Nia Jax got the victory, will advance to the second round for this Queen of the Ring tournament, which I pretty much assumed would be the case. I love Naomi, always have. For those that know me, I love her, one of my favorites all time in that women's division. But Nia Jax advances. And so that's what we have. And we'll get to the bracket in a little bit and take a look at the breakdown towards the end of the show for Raw, for SmackDown, for the men and the women. So again, very good match. Baron Corbin. How about Baron Corbin making his way back to the main roster after spending the better part of a year in NXT? If you did not watch Baron Corbin on NXT, well, that's unfortunate, because it was a nice kind of a reset for him to kind of get not only just his confidence up and his ring ability, racking up some victories, even becoming one half of the NXT Tag Team Champions alongside Braun Breaker, the Wolf Dogs, as they call themselves, for a couple of months, and it was just so good for him. So now, it was kind of weird. I mean, you just saw these two on NXT not too long ago, and seeing the babyface, first time ever, I believe, Baron Corbin going one-on-one with Carmelo Hayes. Obviously, he's been a heel for the past, 2 months. He's been running heel. We knew it was coming a long time ago when he finally turned on his old friend Trick Williams. This match was pretty good. I got to say that Baron Corbin did fantastic. He just looked like a different type of a wrestler out there. Not just, I don't know, maybe it is because he's become a babyface and he came out, shaking fans' hands and getting, all excited and happy to be here. Seemingly he was a little bit on the miserable side, going with this whole heel shtick for years on end and all those different personas he had, as he alluded to in a pre-match, a backstage segment before he was interrupted by Carmelo Hayes, his challenger here. But he was alluding to all the gimmicks he's had in the past, whether it was the Lone Wolf or the Constable Corbin or Happy Corbin or when he was broke and all these other things. So now here he is, refreshed, revitalized, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this run for Baron Corbin. I'm honestly hoping for the best for him. But again, he did not make it past Carmelo Hayes, as many probably thought he wouldn't, namely just because of who he was going up against. Carmelo Hayes has got to be a favorite, if not to win the whole tournament, at least to make it out of the SmackDown side of things. So Carmelo Hayes got the victory here. Decent match. He won by a pinfall with a small package, and much to the surprise of Baron Corbin, but he has nothing to hang his head about. It was definitely a good showing. So the next match here, and I'm not really going to get to too much of the backstage stuff, and I'm not going to break down every segment of every interview and such and so on. But Randy Orton did have an interview, and he was just saying how he accomplished a lot, but he was never king of the ring, and so that's what he's truly focused on getting done, getting to the top of the mountain. He was talking about AJ Styles, his opponent that he'd have later on in the main event, And he got really upset when he started to rehash the memories of last weekend in their defeat to the Bloodlines, Tama Tonga and Solo Sikoa. That was the debut of Tonga Loa, right? Brother of Tama Tonga. And so he was not thrilled about what had happened to him, especially his tag team partner, his buddy old pal Kevin Owens. And he hasn't forgotten about that. So could we see the likes of Tama Tonga and Randy Orton mix it up in this tournament? We certainly could, being that they both advanced. Not to spoil it for those that didn't see the show, but I'll get to all that in a little bit, and we'll break that down even further. So let's get to this women's match here. We had our second women's match of the night, and this was one half of the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, Jade Cargill versus Piper Niven. Now, you got to remember, this was Jade Cargill's first ever singles match in WWE. She debuted at the Royal Rumble, had a pretty good showing there. Was she at the Elimination Chamber? I don't believe she was. No, we all thought she may be in that match, but she wasn't. And, of course, she had the six-woman match at WrestleMania where her, Naomi, and Bianca Belair defeated Damage Control. And, of course, most recently, this past Saturday at Backlash in France, her and Bianca Belair dethrone the Kabuki Warriors to become tag team champions. So we saw a couple matches in between all of that, all these past several months, with more so her in a tag team capacity, whether it was with Bianca Belair or again in more of a trios or grouping with Bianca and Naomi. But this was a first ever singles match. And I gotta say, there's two things I liked about this match. A, they gave these women time, which I was afraid that, Jade may get the win, but it may be in some kind of a squash capacity, which to me wouldn't be fair to Piper Niven. It's Piper Niven. She's been around for a few years. On the main roster, she hasn't done a whole lot, but within the company, within NXT UK, she's done pretty well for herself. So out of respect to Piper Niven, I thought squashing her, not only would it not be a good thing to do, not very nice, but honestly, it wouldn't be realistic. She is not just some slouch that Jade could just run through on this main roster. I'm sure she's going to hit her fair share when it is time for her singles run down the road and making quick work of certain women in the division, fortunately or unfortunately, much like she did in AEW. But this was a good match. I got to say, I was very impressed with both of these women. They gave Piper a lot more offense, not just time in this match, but offense than I thought she would get, deservedly so. And Jade looked good, I gotta say. For her first actual singles match, she exceeded my expectations. That's a fantastic thing. But as we all knew would happen, Jade Cargill got the victory here and hit her with her jaded finisher for the 1-2-3. So she moves on to the second round, rather, much like Nia Jax. And as she was leaving the ring, her tag team partner Bianca Belair made her way to the ring as she was set to have a match against Candice LeRae, which I'll get to in just a moment. And in between all that, coming back from a commercial break, Shinsuke Nakamura cut a promo how he's here on SmackDown now, was on Raw for a while, and he's here to destroy everyone that stands against him and claim what is rightfully his. And so no one is safe, according to Shinsuke Nakamura. And let me just say this. I am a huge fan of Nakamura. I know he's getting up there in age and he's getting older and he's been being booked to put a lot of talent over, younger, older, whatever. And I just hope that he has some kind of a title run before his time with WWE is up. I don't know when his contract is up, but you kind of see the handwriting on the wall for guys that are probably in their mid to late 40s on the roster. Not all of them, but Shinsuke Nakamura, even as of late, AJ Styles, they both look great still. They're wrestling fantastic, but I don't know if either of them are ever going to see singles gold or even, I guess, tag team gold for that matter in WWE. I hope, that they both are able to have some last run as far as the champion's concerned. But anyway, moving on to this women's match. This was the third and final women's match of the night. And again, Bianca Belair versus Candice LeRae for the Queen of the Rings first round. And this was good, but it ended pretty abruptly, I would say. This match was definitely shorter than Jade and Piper Niven, and Bianca Belair won with a KOD, moving on to the second round, much like her tag team partner. Could we see tag team partners mixing it up in the finals of the SmackDown Women's Queen of the Ring? We certainly could, because when all's said and done, once we hear the results of this fourth match later in the weekend, Tiffany Stratton going one-on-one with Michin, and then we'll have our four, right? And we'll see what exactly is at stake here as far as Will we see the champions? I'm going to get to that in a little bit. There's so many different elements and possibilities for this King and Queen of the Ring. So moving on from that match, we see a very interesting backstage segment with the Bloodline. And I mean, what really hasn't been interesting, especially as of late, post-WrestleMania, no Roman Reigns. Solo Sikoa seemingly taking charge. Is he the tribal chief? Could it be him? Could it be somebody else within the family? Could it be The Rock? As many have mentioned, it could be. Until The Rock comes back and basically takes over. I can't wait till we see this new Bloodline, whether it's led by The Rock or not. And then with the OGs, the old Bloodline, Roman Reigns, piecing up the Usos once again, having them back together. So at minimum, you would have Roman Reigns and the Usos versus Solo Sikoa and, as we knew in New Japan Pro Wrestling, GOD, Gorillas of Destiny, Tama Tonga Loa. And then you add the caveat of maybe The Rock being with the new Bloodline, and who'd be with the OGs? Could it be a Sami Zayn? Do they bring new family to WWE, much like they have with GOD to the new Bloodline? Could we see Jacob Fatu shockingly surprise us and him join the old Bloodline, or Lance Anoa'i? Or will, like most of us presume will happen, will Jacob Fatu join the new Bloodline? So there's so many variables here that we have to look forward to. And honestly, just take it in stride. No need to rush things. It's always great to speculate, as all of us do. We're all huge wrestling fans. And so this is where things got really interesting here. So we're backstage, and we have Solo Sikoa, again, with GOD behind him. And then we have Paul Heyman. And Solo Sikoa had some words for Paul Heyman. And Solo says, pretty much to Paul Heyman, you say you haven't spoken to Roman Reigns since WrestleMania, right? And Paul Heyman says, right. And Solo Sikoa says, well, I have spoken to Roman Reigns. Although you haven't, we do have communication going on here. And so that gives Paul Heyman, he's not going to question Solo. How dare he? Especially the way Solo stares him down. And, Tama Tonga Loa don't look like they're overly fond of Paul Heyman either. So with that being said, Paul Heyman's going to keep to himself, take Solo's word seemingly. And so these brash decisions he's made over the past month, whether it was kicking Jimmy Uso out of the Bloodline, adding these new members, Paul Heyman's not going to question it, especially if he believes, even though he's Roman Reigns' wise man, that he's spoken to Roman, that Solo has open communication with him, and that he's being, passed down these orders, which we all know it's certainly not Roman, right? It's not Roman. Again, could it be The Rock? Sure. Could it be somebody else? Possibly. Could it just be coming from Solo Sikoa himself? I guess, but I don't think so, but I suppose. So this is going to be very, very interesting going forward to see what's going to unfold with this new Bloodline. When that segment had ended, Solo Sikoa brought Paul Heyman in for a big hug, and as this hug took place, you could see the way that Tama Tonga are looking at Paul Heyman, as Solo Sikoa basically, peered off in his periphery, looking at them like, yeah, we got this guy. So it's just, sooner than later, not only did they dupe Paul Heyman right away, but I believe he'll be kicked out, possibly beaten down one day, and he's booted from the group. I don't think they need Paul Heyman with this new Bloodline. I don't necessarily see Paul Heyman returning to the old Bloodline either. As cool as that would be to see with Roman and the Usos, I think that Paul Heyman's time with either of the Bloodline groups simply may be up. He may be taking a break from the on-screen aspect of it and just work behind the scenes, and then, who knows, maybe see him reemerge with another superstar, a newer superstar, sooner than later. Let's leave in the comments some thoughts you may think of who would be a good pairing for Paul Heyman going forward, whether it's a new talent that just came up from NXT, a talent that could use a boost, or maybe could we see him and CM Punk reunite at some point in time, whether it's Punk as a babyface as he is now, or more likely when it is time for CM Punk to turn heel, hardcore heel, I'll say, because is CM Punk really ever a true through and through 100% babyface? I don't think so. He always has those heel tendencies. I guess it's more so not just his demeanor, but when he begins to cut those out of the blue promos, whether it's backstage or in the center of that ring, you tend to wonder where he's coming from at this point. So anyway, that was pretty much that. And here we have another first-round matchup for the King of the Ring. We have Angelo Dawkins, who replaced fellow stablemate Bobby Lashley, going one-on-one with Tonga. Now, Bobby Lashley was said that he had injured himself outside of the ring. I believe it was in some kind of a workout capacity. I don't know if it was at the top of the week or what, but it was being promoted at least till Wednesday, I want to say, at least till midday Wednesday, that we, in fact, were getting Bobby Lashley versus Tama. But here we are, Angelo Dawkins. This one was brief. I want to say this was the shortest of the 6 matches that we got to see on SmackDown. Quite honestly, it might have been the shortest of the 12 matches combined between Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown's first round for this King or Queen of the Ring tournament. But it looked like Angelo Dawkins had a pretty good grip on things for a while. He was taking care of Tonga. It looked like, all right, maybe he does have the potential to win this one. And that was not the case, because as we saw outside of the ring, and this was just moments after Montez Ford had taken out both Tonga Loa and Solo Sikoa from the ring apron, flipping onto them, taking them both out. They got him back very quickly. Solo Sikoa, I believe it was, or Tonga Loa actually threw Montez Ford into the ring post on the outside. Solo followed up with a Samoan spike. Angelo Dawkins, seeing this, distracted, which we knew at this point in time was how Tama was going to get his victory. Tama took full advantage, and he won with a jumping reverse STO for the 1-2-3. Now, post-match, it wasn't over for Dawkins yet. Unfortunately, Solo hit a Samoan spike on Angelo Dawkins in the center of the ring to wrap things up, put a bow on it. Obviously, there was no Bobby Lashley again, because if we were to see Lashley, he would have been in the center of that ring, having his scheduled matchup with Tonga. That was not the case. The numbers game, unfortunately, got to what they call the Pride now, the Profits and Bobby Lashley and B-Fab. So it was just B-Fab there by her lonesome. Not much she could do, of course, with Solo Sikoa, Tonga Loa, Tonga out there like madmen, Paul Heyman, and so on. And so he is advancing in this tournament. And so I want to say that was, we were 5 matches down, and we had nothing left but the main event. Yeah, so that was the only matches we saw on SmackDown were the ones for this tournament, and I'm fine with that. So here we are. It's main event time. AJ Styles going one-on-one with Randy Orton. This is a King of the Ring first-round matchup, and this was a fantastic match. I thought it was very good. I mean, just on paper, the match speaks for itself. 2 veterans in the game. Again, AJ Styles been with WWE 9 years. Randy Orton, he's been there pretty much his whole career, right? Spanning well over 2 decades by now. And AJ Styles, his career, I mean, it's been even longer than Randy Orton's. It's just been, the vast majority was outside of WWE. But anyway, these two, as they always do, put on a great show. Fantastic match. Now, this was a match going into this one that I was not sure who was going to come out with the victory, because just as much as it was probably leaning a little bit more towards Randy Orton possibly, the fact of the matter is they both needed a win, right? Neither one got the victory at WrestleMania 40. AJ Styles lost to LA Knight. We had Randy Orton and Kevin Owens had lost that match for the United States Championship, that triple threat versus Logan Paul. He came out retaining his title, obviously. And so you want to fast forward to Backlash just a week ago. And here we are again. AJ Styles in the main event against Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes got the victory. Here we are at the top of the show, the very start, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast. Obviously, there was some interference with the newest member of the Bloodline, Tonga Loa. But long story short, Randy Orton, Kevin Owens did not get the job done, so they lost. So all that being said, these men both needed a victory, not just to advance to the next round of the King of the Ring tournament, but let's be honest here, to boost morale at minimum, even though they both have a very decorated career. Like I said, AJ in and out of WWE, Randy obviously in WWE, and so this match was good. And again, it was a toss-up. Where was this going to go? Who was going to advance? It's obviously single elimination here. And Randy Orton was the one who got the job done when all was said and done. Fantastic match. Obviously, had to win in what other fashion, but winning with an RKO to get the victory. And so he advances. And so there's that. What's this mean for AJ Styles? Where is he going to go going forward? You know, he came back as a heel. Well, what's it been since early January, right? He returned in early January and had that match with LA Knight, Randy Orton. Yet again, him and Randy have been crossing paths a whole lot this year. AJ Styles, and there was that fatal 4-way, right, for Roman's Undisputed Championship. And again, another loss suffered by both of those men, Randy and AJ. They just can't seem to find their winning ways in 2024. But hopefully Randy continues to advance. I could very easily see him making his way out of the SmackDown bracket to the finals in 2 weeks' time in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia at King of the Ring for that final there. And AJ Styles, let's see if he can get it together with this new heel run. I don't know. It's not going so good for him. He looks fantastic. He's probably in the best shape of his life. His wrestling has continued to remain great as well. So I don't know what is next for the phenomenal one, that's for sure. So now it's official. We have going from 4 to 5 matches for this King and Queen of the Ring tournament. Knowing how Triple H books things, we're probably at most, I don't think we're even going to get 7 matches. I could see potentially a 6th match being added. I mean, maybe they'll do a 7th match, being that they're making their way all the way to Saudi. But we'll see. Probably 6 or 7 matches. But right now we have 5 matches. As I mentioned earlier in the week, for the men, the King of the Ring tournament final, and of course for the women, the Queen of the Ring tournament final, are 2 matches that will be taking place at that event. And then we have Becky Lynch versus Liv Morgan for Becky's Women's World Championship. We have a triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship. Sami Zayn will be defending against both Chad Gable and Bronson Reed. And now the most recent match that was added to that card, as I said at the top of this podcast, that we found out Friday night on SmackDown. They're calling it Champion versus Champion. Again, I don't think it's Championship versus Championship, where I believe it's only Cody's WWE Championship being put on the line here. But we have Cody Rhodes versus Logan Paul. Again, it doesn't make much sense to put the U.S. title on the line. And another point I meant to make at the top of this show is, why would they even remotely jeopardize Logan Paul losing that United States Championship prior to August 3rd? That is SummerSlam. That is in his hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. There is no way that Logan Paul is walking into SummerSlam in less than 3 months' time without that championship. It's just not happening. So he's going to walk in there. He's United States champion. Now, will he walk out as United States champion? That's a different conversation for a different day. I don't think Logan Paul, regardless who he goes up against, whether it's an LA Knight or so on, will retain. I think he does drop potentially at SummerSlam, but we'll get to that down the road. But yeah, I don't see that being put on the line here, so I think that could be put to rest. Cody will retain, even if it's in a DQ capacity. Could he beat Logan outright? Of course, but just knowing how Logan Paul does, I could see him getting caught with the brass knuckles, and the referee calls it off. Cody wins by DQ or something like that, or sees him hit Cody with the brass knuckles before he's about to finish the job and win the good title Cody has, obviously. But I see that something like that happening instead of Cody pinning or submitting Logan Paul outright, because they got to protect Logan Paul too, right? Even though he's, a mid-card champion, it's still the United States Championship. You got to protect that. You got to protect him going into this summer. So that's how I see it. But yeah, that was SmackDown. Again, we got 6 out of the 8 matches for King and Queen of the Ring on SmackDown, and the 2 that we'll see this weekend. Well, we won't see them live, but we'll hear about the results, I'm sure, unless we see some clips on Twitter or on social media. We have LA Knight going one-on-one with Santos Escobar, where I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that LA Knight will likely win that first-round matchup. Another guy that is in desperate need of a victory, much like AJ Styles, is Santos Escobar. He needs a win quick. And for the women's side of things, for the Queen of the Ring first round, we have Michin going one-on-one with Tiffany Stratton. Tiffany Stratton, simply put, will win this one. Happy for Michin, though, this past week on NXT, she won her qualifying match. I believe it was for the Women's North American Championship, something along those lines, for that coming up at their next event. And so it's good to see Michin get a win. I actually had read that was Michin's first singles victory since January of 2023, which is bizarre to me. Like, look, I know she's got stiff competition on SmackDown and so on, but there's no reason why it should be, the better part of 15 plus months or so since she's won her last singles match. That's ridiculous to me. So again, unfortunately, another loss coming for her on the main roster on SmackDown, but hopefully she can make a decent run in NXT, much like many do when they make their way down there. Again, Baron Corbin had a good resurgence down there. Maybe Mia Yim could get her hands on this brand new title that was announced at Stand and Deliver last month, and we'll see what happens with that whole bit. Let's see, as far as other matches, other results that we have to find out, the 7th and 8th matches to round out that round 1 of Monday Night Raw. We have Rey Mysterio going one-on-one this weekend with Kofi Kingston and his LWO counterpart in Zelina Vega. She has a singles match as well with the Queen of Spades, Shayna Baszler. And that will round out round 1 for both Raw and SmackDown. Once we find out the results of those 4 matchups, we'll be good to go here. So they promoted at the end of the show that next Friday on SmackDown, we'll have Randy Orton versus Carmelo Hayes in the second round. And that we will also have Tama Tonga facing the winner of LA Knight and Santos Escobar. So that's going to be good. Look, I'm just going to jump and say let's piece in LA Knight versus Tama Tonga. That's a tough one. It really is. I could just as easily see them pushing Tama Tonga again due to bloodline tactics over LA Knight. How many times have they screwed over LA Knight before? So I could see Tama Tonga making his way past LA Knight. And as far as Randy Orton versus Carmelo Hayes, I'm going to have to go with Randy Orton here. Could I see them potentially pushing Carmelo? Sure, but look, the bottom line is he made it past the first round, Carmelo Hayes. And so, especially if a guy like Tama Tonga goes over LA Knight, I just don't see them continuously pushing the younger, newer talent in Carmelo Hayes and Tama Tonga both in this tournament specifically. I mean, we could just as easily get Randy Orton versus LA Knight in the SmackDown final, right? I could see that taking place for sure. But I think we're going to see veteran versus youth. So however way it shakes up, so be it. On the women's side of things, though, things are really heating up and getting interesting. We have Jade Cargill going one-on-one with Nia Jax, and we have Bianca Belair, who will presumably go up against the likes of Tiffany Stratton. This is what intrigues me just as much, if not more, than the whole King of the Ring. This Queen of the Ring SmackDown side of things is very intriguing. And I say that because I look at Jade Cargill, and she's going up against, again, size and strength. We saw that with Piper Niven. We obviously see this with Nia Jax. She put on a great showing with Piper Niven. So kudos to Cargill and Niven on a fantastic match. And this one has the potential to be just as good, if not better, this coming Friday on SmackDown. It's hard to say who's going to advance here. So before I say, I'm going to jump to this next one. Bianca Belair versus Tiffany Stratton, likely in the next round. Also going to be another fantastic match where I'm super curious to see. Will they go with Bianca winning and Jade Cargill winning her match and having the tag team champions go at it for the final, for the SmackDown side of things to advance to Saudi? I don't think we see that yet. I think the first time we get to see that matchup is when things break down many months from now. When they're no longer tag team champions, when there's dysfunction between the two, when we see that inevitable split between them, and eventual heel turn by one of them, most likely by Bianca Belair turning on Jade way down the road. So I think we save that matchup for that. I don't think you do the fun, friendly matchup here because regardless who comes out the winner, the loser, I think that as supportive as they are for one another, there's going to be some kind of underlying jealousy, which, look, if Jade were to beat Bianca in this tournament, that could actually benefit this storyline going forward, that Bianca never got over that, and that was her reason as to why she did what she did when it is time for her to turn on Jade Cargill. I do get that. Man, this is a really difficult one for me to pick. I want to say Nia Jax is going to squeak by Jade Cargill here, and maybe we see Nia versus Bianca Belair. But on a whim, I think I'm going to go the opposite direction here, and I think that I'm going to lean more towards Jade Cargill making her way past Nia Jax, Tiffany Stratton making her way past Bianca Belair. And so Jade Cargill versus Tiffany Stratton sounds like a pretty decent final for the SmackDown side of things for Queen of the Ring. So that's probably what I would leave it at for the time being as far as how I see things going. Now, speaking of injuries here, we already had 3 injuries prior to this King and Queen of the Ring tournament. Drew McIntyre was pulled. Asuka was pulled from the women's Queen of the Ring tournament there. And, of course, the most recent was Bobby Lashley. Looking at a current list of injured WWE superstars, I mean, injuries are a part of the game. We do all understand and get that completely. It's a year-round business, year-round sport, so it's rough. But Drew McIntyre, Charlotte Flair, Rhea Ripley, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, Jimmy Uso, at least for the time being. I don't know if it's legit or not, if he's just written off of TV because of that. Again, Bobby Lashley, Asuka, as I mentioned, Raquel Rodriguez, Dominic Mysterio. Talking about NXT here, Nikita Lyons. We have also Cora Jade from NXT out. Eric of the Viking Raiders, Sonya Deville, and of course Big E, who's been out for a couple of years now. But it is pretty crazy to see how many are out. And of course, Alexa Bliss and Carmelo still out of action as well. So that's a lot of talent. And WWE is still doing great. They're still thriving, still putting on compelling television. With all that being said, so thankfully there's a lot of men and women that could step up, especially when a lot of the big names go down. So that's always good to see there. Now for this women's, the Queen of the Ring tournament on Monday Night Raw, I'm very curious to see who's going to come out of Lyra Valkyria versus Zoe Stark. That's one that intrigues me a lot. Will they continue to push Lyra Valkyria coming up from NXT? Or will they finally give Zoe Stark the respect she's deserved and earned over the last year and a half, and they've kind of been reluctant to push her in any kind of singles capacity. I mean, honestly, even in tag team, I thought her and Shayna Baszler would have been tag team champions by now a while ago, so that never took place. So curious to see who's going to come out of that one. And Io Sky, again, waiting on the winner of Shayna Baszler and Zelina Vega this weekend to see who she's going to have in the next round. So regardless of that, I see Io Sky coming out with the win, regardless who comes out of that side of things. But yeah, super curious about Lyra Valkyria versus Zoe Stark in the next round for the women. And as far as the men are concerned, if I could just pull up the men's side of things, the men's bracket here, we have Gunther waiting on the winner of Kofi Kingston versus Rey Mysterio. Again, much like I said with Io Sky, going past whoever wins in that round, I see Gunther defeating either Rey Mysterio or Kofi Kingston. On his resume, it's going to look fantastic, beating one of these two household names in WWE. And the other matchup for Monday Night Raw, Ilya Dragunov versus Jey Uso. Love Jey Uso, I really do, but we have to remember he was a replacement for Drew McIntyre, so I don't think they're going to continue to push him like they were maybe thinking about with Drew McIntyre. So I'm going to go with Ilya Dragunov. So we get Gunther and Dragunov in that finals matchup for the King of the Ring as far as Monday Night Raw is concerned. That's going to be fantastic there. And I think I pretty much covered everything as far as everything I needed to discuss for the King of the Ring and Queen of the Ring for Raw and SmackDown. Yeah, that was pretty much it. I got to end with this, right? So earlier in the week, I did a little bit of a preview special for the King of the Ring and Queen of the Ring for SmackDown. And although all the men listed for SmackDown side of things, Styles, Orton, Corbin, Melo, LA Knight, Santos Escobar, of course it was initially Bobby Lashley, who was then replaced by Angelo Dawkins, and then Tonga, all legit. However, on the women's side of things, whoever made up these graphics that were phony, thanks a lot. I mean, look, I know I wasn't the only one, but they had these 4 matches on these graphics that looked legit. A lot of people were fooled by it, but it was debunked earlier in the week. And they had Tiffany Stratton going one-on-one with Blair Davenport. They also had Nia Jax going one-on-one with Piper Niven, which I thought would have been very interesting too. So look, at least I'll say out of these 4 women mentioned, at least 3 of them were in the tournament. Stratton, Jax, and Piper Niven. Now the other 4 matches that were said to take place, Chelsea Green, Indy Hartwell. Neither of them were even in the tournament. And then the 4th and final matchup, Naomi versus Candice LeRae. Now, those two, Naomi and Candice, were in this tournament from the get-go, of course, not against one another. Unfortunately, Naomi suffered a loss to Nia Jax, and Candice LeRae suffered a loss to Bianca Belair, so both of them are out. But yeah, whoever came up with these graphics, they look legit. You did a great job, I gotta say. This Photoshop job is fantastic here. But you got us. You got a lot of us. So I wish I would have saw that before I recorded the other day, but it's nor here nor there. At least the men's side of things was accurate. And so looking forward to this next round, these quarterfinals for the men and the women. Again, just 2 weeks away from King and Queen of the Ring in Saudi Arabia. What is that? Saturday, May 25th. And it's going to be a good one. Again, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, 5 matches already scheduled. We may get a 6th or 7th, and that will probably be that. So as always, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. I am your host, Pat Deneen, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.